Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to On the Bright Line podcast, tales from recovering food addicts from the perspective of a physician, a therapist, and an off-the-wall storyteller. We are not affiliated or endorsed by Brightline Eating, and all content presented in this podcast represents our personal opinions and does not represent medical, nutritional, or psychological professional advice. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the emergency action plan and what that looks like, and heck, even what that means.
What does that mean?
What does EAP, emergency action plan, mean? I can talk about it from my perspective. I think that it's one of the tools that BLE asks people to put into place when they start the program, because inevitably in the world that we live in our society, we're going to come upon situations that probably are going to be stressful and may be pushing us back to old habits of food for comfort or, NMF, NMD, all those things. And so this is steps that we can take in order to hopefully distract us, maybe move our mind back to a centered place and the like. So that is what the emergency action plan is in a nutshell. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Robin, from a professional perspective?
Well, okay. So it's that idea of coming up with a concrete list of things to do that will either distract you or soothe you, and so helping you get past that momentary crisis, right? And I am a huge fan of you need to write it down, because I don't know about you, but I come up with these great ideas of the things that I can do that they'll be wonderful, and then in the moment, my little chicken brain just goes offline and I completely forget everything that I said I would do, or I tell myself that won't work. Right? And that is called help rejecting complaining, right? Well, that won't work for me today because, right? I am making an excuse. But when you write it down, there is something really magic that happens, that I will write something down, and then in the moment I will pull my list up. And usually the first thing I say is, I remember when I wrote this list and I really believed this list. So maybe I don't believe it in this very second, but I remember I really believed it when I wrote it. So let me give it a try. Let me see what happens. Right? And so I know we were kind of talking, Meagan, a little bit about what's on your list. What came up for you or resonated for you as, okay, these are some things that I might try.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to steal from someone here, and I will give them credit. Krista, she is a Brightline Loser on Instagram, had a discussion the other day about making sure that the things that you put on your EAP are things that you will actually want to do.
Yeah.
Not actually just do, but things that you'll want to do. And the word she used was indulgent. And I really like that. And that was my big takeaway. I think it was actually even a takeaway from one of the accountability calls from the BLE community, but that's neither here nor there. The reality is that it has to be something that not only that you will do, but something you'll want to do in that moment that will be the distraction. So those are the kinds of things that I put on my emergency action plan. So
it's got to be enough of a dopamine hit for your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so because I'm going back through the boot camp, I went ahead and wrote another emergency action plan, and it's on my phone. So that's where I keep it. I keep it in the notes on my phone. It's always with me. I always have my phone with me. If you know me, I always have my phone with me.
She always has her phone with her.
So the first one is to use the Marco Polo app to get with my mastermind group. That's my number one thing. So they are my number one accountability. They know that. They're ready and willing. If they see it pop up, or if I text them, hey, emergency, they'll jump on and, give me the accountability and the encouragement and that sort of thing. So that's number one. The second one is call Bonny. And not that I don't want to call Robin, but Robin doesn't struggle in the same way that Bonny and I do with food addiction. And so I think having somebody that really understands like what you're going through, that would be my second thing. So my third thing is to post on one of the social media, Instagram or TikTok, because that's obviously a dopamine hit for me, as it is for a lot of people, to, you know, put your content out there and have people like it and the like. So posting in the Facebook group and the Brightline community is number 4. Because again, there's accountability there, there's feedback there, another good place to kind of be seen. Playing with my kids, I put that all the way down to number 5, not because I don't love to do that, but it's just a good distraction to focus on them and not on myself. Take a walk, just get outside. I like to hike, so maybe I should have take a hike. And then my last one was meditate, which I've tried to make that into more of a habit of mine, a daily habit of mine. And we're going to do a whole podcast on habit stacks and creating habits and that sort of thing. But that's something that's in my EAP, but it's also part of my daily habit now, is to meditate.
Right.
So,
Right.
do you have an emergency action plan, Bonnie?
I have a few things. My biggest daily risk is like the chronic, not exciting, not dramatic grind of little work stresses. You know, so I have a meeting coming up I'm not looking forward to, or I just need to sit and do 2 hours of tedious spreadsheets or something that I'm not, and so my previous behavior was to go get a snack, which resulted in a lot of daily snacks. And of course, on BLE, we don't snack.
Yeah.
That's not part of my program. So I've had to put in an emergency action plan for that specific issue, which usually involves me going outside and tending to plants, because that makes me happy. And I have lots of plants in my environment, and so I always need to water or weed or do something. Yeah. And it's indulgent because it's time away from work, which I'm not normally supposed to do, or I guess I don't normally allow myself to do, because I don't have like somebody watching me on the clock per se, but I'm very type A work driven. And so that's an indulgence to be able to just step away and literally go outside, breathe fresh air. The less frequent but more dangerous risk for me going off plan is when a big life event happens that's really stressful. Yeah. So I have been able to finally, through a lot of inner work, which we've talked about in this program isn't really important, I recognize that I know that I will be vulnerable to having a problem when I have a big one. We've had some major health scares, we've had some losses, family dramas, things that I know kind of like, it's not just a meeting that I'm stressed about today. It's something that's going to stress me out for several weeks, that I'm going to cope with okay, but is like, again, would definitely lead me to be like, oh, I can have the NMF, NMD, because it's
a bad day.
Because it's a bad time. Because of course, those are my go-tos before, and they're not anymore. And so, I think my number one emergency action plan in that sense has been reaching out to you guys as my tight community, and I've basically verbalized to you, hey, I have this thing going on. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to ooch my quantities. I'm at risk for that. And then you guys check back in with me. How's it going? Not in a judgmental, and I'll be like, yep, I did ooch my quantities a little bit. I'm going to rein that in today. Yeah. I think that's really important, is recognizing when you're going to need to initiate your emergency action plan. If you're going to go to somebody's house and there's people there that you don't get along with, maybe that judge your program, right? Do not wait until you're in the middle of that dinner party,
Right.
Yeah.
to decide to initiate your EAP.
Yeah.
Right? You need to plan ahead. Like, what am I even going to eat there? I know that so-and-so is going to make me uncomfortable. Think ahead. The thinking ahead is part of, for me, about my emergency action plan.
Yeah.
It's not just having it, written down or knowing what it's going to be, but it's also like, when am I going to institute it?
Right, that you're not waiting until you're at code red.
Yes.
Right, that if you know that these people are going to trigger you, you need to have
And
that
when I
ready
have
to go.
gotten there, I just go ahead and for me, it's quantities. I have not broken my sugar flour lines, but I definitely will. I will just exceed quantities or have a snack, a BLE compliant snack.
Right.
And I'm just in the middle of doing it going, yep, I'm doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's because I haven't planned ahead and I'm ignoring my emergency action plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think another strategy that a lot of people employ is to kind of bookend things. I don't know if you've done that before. I know I have, where, basically like, yes, I know I'm going into this hard situation.
Yes.
I'm going to tell people, hey, I know I'm going into this hard situation. Can you hold me accountable?
Yeah.
And I will check back in with you when I come out of this hard situation to, so that we can talk about like how I did and that sort of thing. So I think that's another really good strategy. And that's even just like a strategy, not even an EAP, just a strategy for everyday life of dealing with being, we're living in a world where this is not the norm as far as what eating and drinking looks like. So
I think for me, I am a big fan of kind of keeping my hands busy, right? Like Bonnie, I love going out into the garden, and I will literally just walk around my garden a few times. If I'm having a difficult day, I'll just go walk around the garden, or I'll even just drive to the garden center, right? And one of the things I will mention is being really careful not to substitute one unhealthy coping skill for another, right? So it's really easy to say, well, I'm not going to eat, but I'll go shopping.
Oh, yes.
Right.
oh gosh, the shopping, especially
The
when you're
shopping,
losing clothes sizes
Yes.
and need new clothes.
It can
I
be
don't even-
tempting.
Yeah, no, tempting.
Well, but
Yeah,
but to spend more than you might
absolutely.
want to.
And then you look and you're
Right.
like, what have I done? Oh, wait,
Right.
I've just replaced clothes shopping with food
Right.
eating.
Right.
And I think I did that early on in BLE. That was one of my coping. That's not an
Right.
emergency action plan.
No,
Right.
no.
That's an unhealthy coping
Right.
skill
Sure,
because you didn't write down or
Right.
implement your emergency action plan.
Yeah.
And I think
Yep.
that's a thing. It's like, we talk about parts work in BLE, and we'll probably get into that at some
will.
point.
Yes.
But when we talk about, if you just think about it, even if you don't know what parts work is, you have an indulger and a rebel part. We all do, right? And the indulger is like, I deserve this because I've had a hard day. And the rebel is like, screw this, I'm not
Right.
doing that.
You can't make
You
me.
can't
You
tell
can't
I'm
me.
going to do what I want. And so I think if we give in to those parts, then we decide that we want to ignore what we should be doing that's healthy for ourselves because we're just not ready to let go of the unhealthy coping skill yet because we haven't put enough work into building the other habits that can be part of an EAP that can be successful.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can give yourself some grace with that, but like Meagan said, then you got to bookend it and say, all right, and I've done that, I had that snack when I had that really stressful thing. I literally just rammed through it knowing that I was doing it and I should have done something else. I got to regroup. And the next time that happens, what am I going to do?
What will I do
So you've
different?
got to update your emergency action plan.
Absolutely.
To make sure that you're really going to do it. And I know, Meagan, you had talked about, that idea of making sure it's indulgent, right?
Indulgent,
Making
yeah.
sure it's something like
Thank you, Krista.
if you make a list of things that you should do that aren't things that are going to make you feel good,
Yeah.
that's not the right list.
Because it's not going to work, and then you're going to
No.
go, see, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? I am a big fan of, I like to keep my hands busy. And so whether that's, well, I'm going to paint my nails, or I'm going to, knit something, or go out and pull weeds. For me, those are things that feel good. They do feel indulgent because I get to go, oh, see, look, I got that garden bed, all weeded and it looks beautiful. And to me, that's calm and peaceful and soothing, right? I am also a huge fan of some of the different meditation apps. Some of the ones that I really like are Insight Timer, because I am super cheap. And so I like things that are free.
That's what I use too.
Yeah,
Insight
so I love Insight Timer. The Breathe app is really good if you're just wanting something that's going to help you breathe. The What's Up app can also be good. It's not the communication app. It's literally if you look for it, it's like a pink app with a black hand, and it's got some, get help right now. So some grounding techniques of, okay, what are 5 things that are red? What are, name 5 animals that can fly. So those distraction pieces of, how can you get your mind somewhere else? Because the studies have shown that wherever you put your attention for 17 seconds is where your mind is going to go. Right? So if I can get my mind on something else for a good 17 seconds and do it very consciously, right? To say, you know what, I need to stop thinking about, going and getting a snack, or, what am I going to eat for dinner? I need to put my attention somewhere else. So that track of, okay, what is distracting enough for 17 seconds? The other thing I sometimes recommend for EAPs is sometimes we need to categorize them, right? There are things if let's talk about stress levels of maybe as, yellow, orange, and red. So if my stress level is only yellow, maybe going and walking around my garden is going to be enough, right? It's going to be enough of a dopamine hit to get me through that moment. If my stress level is red, that is probably not going to be enough. I might use that in concert with maybe 2 or 3 other things, right? Maybe I'll go walk around the garden first, and then I'll be able to do a meditation, or maybe I need to call a friend in there, right? But choosing that order. So being willing to say, well, if I'm really at red, if I'm around Aunt Martha, who's a food pusher, what am I going to do if I'm going to take a break and go escape to the bathroom, right? And text a friend, what are all the things that I really need to do? And am I checking in with myself on where is my stress level right now, right? Like just like in the medical community, we use the 0 to 10 scale. 10 is maybe the worst stress that I can imagine. 0 is none. And so if you're able to, before you hit that EAP, to say, you know what, right now my stress level's an 8. All right. And now I'm going to let me go do the first 3 things, and let me check in again. Oh, well, you know what? I'm only down to a 5. I actually need to go take a little more time and do a few more things, right? Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and you had also talked about like having things like at the ready.
Yes. It's so easy to go, well, yes, I have this EAP, and maybe, doing crossword puzzles or knitting or doing my nails is on the list, but oh my gosh, where's all my stuff? Oh my gosh, I can't find my stuff. So I recommend to people either have a drawer or get yourself a cute little basket, or even make a box, and maybe you're gonna decoupage that box, right? You were gonna hit Michael's, and you were gonna craft it up, and you are going to make yourself a really special
EAP box, guys.
EAP box, man. Right? And so that all of those things are at the ready, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that means you have some books on mindfulness. Maybe you have a special journal. But those things that live in that box are things that you only get to use when you are activating that EAP, that level of your EAP, let's say, right? So that they are right there and they are special, right? Like I have this lovely hand lotion that my friend Carrie gave me that just, it's just decadent. And that's part of my little kit. It's in my drawer in my desk. So it's right next to me. I can reach for it. I have, my friend Lisa gave me some, I think they're called sweary affirmations, right? Which I love. And they just make me laugh, but they're also positive. And so I'll sit and shuffle those cards and grab one of my sweary affirmations, right? But having them at the ready is really important.
And I think the other thing, Susan does talk about this in the BLE program, that the first thing she says is, or not, maybe it's not the first thing, but one of the things she says is set a timer, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
She's like, set a 20-minute timer. And so like, if you have nothing, if you're someplace where you have nothing else, if you feel like you need to eat or indulge or do whatever you need to do, she says, set a 20-minute timer and then see how you feel at the end of that. So I think that it's, that obviously goes right along with what you said. It's like, take an assessment at the beginning of the, of the stressor, do some things and then see where you're at after that. So I think it's great. I mean, I think the biggest thing is writing it down. I think that you said it, but I'll say it again, writing it down so that you have a visual and making sure it's with you at all times. Some people like paper. I do not. I don't like paper. I lose paper. So I have it on my phone, but that doesn't mean you have to do like I do. You can do your own thing, but I definitely think that writing down your emergency action plan is important.
And I think finally, like thinking about if what happens to you is you're just in the food and you didn't know it was coming, right?
Like it snuck up on you.
I just found myself in the pantry eating, right? You may be listening to this and thinking, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Like that didn't work for me. I don't know how I got there. I just cannot stop myself, And if that's where you're at when that's happening, I just think you have to go back and work with a counselor, work with a mastermind group, you've got to really do the work to work through there is a reason you got there. There are warning signs. And I think that's the biggest thing that I have worked on when I started BLE that I've never worked on with any other meal plan or diet that I ever did before.
Yeah.
It's just that I've really had to work on, all right, I get that the food addiction is why I'm doing it.
Right.
But when am I getting to that moment?
Yeah.
And again, starting to go, oh, I've got 3 stressful meetings today. I know I'm at risk today. Starting to think ahead before, you know what I mean? And then also, again, giving yourself some grace and not judging it. But after that moment is over, if that's happened, analyze, how did I get here? This isn't the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and how and when should I implement the EAP so that I'm successful next time? Because I can't just, you know, I think you talked about at the beginning, just that self-defeating kind of like, well, it's not going to work anyway, so why bother? It's like, it works. You just have to decide you're ready to work on it. But you've got to do some self-analysis and, you know, figure out why and when it's happening and get your EAP rolling before it gets to that point.
Yes.
It's the idea of, right, and I know we've talked about this, kind of that chatter, right, that self-talk. So if we look at it from a cognitive behavioral therapy perspective, it's what is that self-talk that's in your head, right? And so many people, when I start talking to them about cognitive behavioral therapy, will say, well, there's nothing, no. And the more you start listening for it, oh my gosh, all of a sudden you hear it, right? And the problem is that chatter starts to ramp up. And your stress level, it's like a freight train, right? It's not too bad when the freight train's only going maybe 10 miles an hour, right? You can handle that. The problem is some of us aren't tuned into our chatter until that freight train is going 90 miles an hour, and that's when you find yourself in front of the pantry or opening the fridge, right? Going, I don't know how I got here. And just like you're saying, there were reasons that got you there. And so it's that willingness to really start tuning in to what's going on, not only in your brain, but in your body, because our body starts screaming at us. But because we live in the society we live, we are very disconnected from our mind and body, right? And we don't listen for it. And so the beauty is the more you listen for it, the faster and the faster you catch it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep. So, moral of the story, guys, write an EAP.
Write it down.
Write an EAP, use your EAP, practice it. I think that's another thing we didn't say, but it's definitely something that is touted in the program, is practice it.
I will make sure that on my Two Creeks Counseling Instagram page that I have a list of some different distractions that people might pull from. So if they're struggling to come up with some on their own, they'll be able to check out that and see what works for them.
And that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.